Welcome back to another Ab Notebook podcast with the hockey coach, Coach Franchise, directly for the beautiful country of Thailand on amazing, great weekend of the middle of the May. And we have today Mr. Marco Larabie, directly from Hawkesbury, to talking about the Montreal Canadiens, the end of the season of the 2024-2025. We're going to do, Marco, the Habs post-mortem. We're going to talk about different players, the report card, and many more other things. I would like you to add a little bit more about the subject we're going to talk about today.
Hey, Coach. Well, great to be on again. We've been enjoying kind of the playoffs. The kind of end of the season for Montreal, was kind of a whirlwind, right? Just exciting round, still some fun hockey during Washington. But then, we were waiting for the locker clean out, and then Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, they weren't meeting with the media the same day. So we decided to just wait a little bit until everything kind of cooled down so we could really analyze everything. So really excited to kind of take a look back here now that we've had weeks to digest what happened. And look forward. Let's do a little bit of a post-mortem and dig into what was a pretty awesome season for the Montreal Canadiens.
We have a lot to talk about today, so let's diving and jumping about the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to start with a resume of what happening in the beginning of the October 2024-2025 season for the Montreal Canadiens. And he start, of course, with the Montreal Canadiens, the training camp. And we have right here this information. The Montreal Canadiens have the training camp. And right away, we have the injury of Patrick Laine and David Rebecca, Marco. And since that, you see a different philosophy for Martin St. Louis.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that Martin St. Louis is going to really need to correct over last year was the training camp. The training camp was an absolute disaster, Coach. I hope that they really take in their postmortem, that they really take a look at that, because it's going to be really critical for Montreal to get off to a good start. And the training camp did not go really well. If you'll recall, there was obviously the injury to Laine was a big one, but remember there was those games against Ottawa, and they weren't dressing their lineup, and there's all kinds of weird decisions I felt for the training camp, where they decided to not play their full lineups, and it showed, and then obviously the famous kind of hybrid system. There's been a lot of debate over that, but I think we've learned in the postmortem that David Savard actually had a conversation with Martin St. Louis and said, listen, your hybrid system is just a little too complicated for some of the guys. We need to simplify things. And we talked about this in the show in November. Basically, the big change that they had made is it was pretty much the same hybrid system they had at the end of last year. But then St. Louis wanted to add another element where the defenseman always either kind of what it was at the front of the net or would go apply pressure. And it just wasn't working. Players like Jacky, for example, they weren't able to understand what was going on. So they simplified it a little bit more. It's not 100% man-on-man system they went to, but it's like a man-on-man plus one, I think is what it's called, right? Coach, you probably know better than I, but ultimately they simplified it, and then immediately you started to kind of see the results. So you're right. The training camp was a really, really big issue. So obviously that disastrous game, I think it was against Toronto. It was against Toronto, right? That Laine got injured, and then Reinbacher also got injured in the same game. So just not a very good tone, to the start of the season, and it really showed. Montreal dug themselves such a huge hole, especially in the goals against. It's almost like two different teams, Coach. When you're looking at the 24-25 season for the Montreal Canadiens, you almost have to look at it at before November and after November, because it's two totally different teams. So really good point. And really some disappointing kind of, and another thing that maybe we should mention, Coach, is, and this is another thing I hope that Montreal learns from, and we talk lots of, PLW in our chat brought this up all year, is the Kovacevic risk that they took, right? So they trade Kovacevic, assuming that either Mayu, Reinbacher, or Barron was going to be able to take that spot. And unfortunately, none of them were able to really kind of do it. And then, Reinbacher got hurt, And then Mayu and Barron just didn't really fit the bill. We'll talk about this later, right? But when you're looking at what you're going to do at the center position this year, is Montreal going to make the same mistake and let somebody like Dvorak go, and then just hope that Beck or Kapanen is going to be able to take that position? Are they going to kind of fall into the same mistake where you want to leave some spots open for young guys, right? But do you want them to earn that spot or just give it to them? So that's another thing early in the season is if they let Kovacevic go, Barron wasn't able to really do the job. Roy, his compete level was just not acceptable for Martin Saint-Louis, and we could all see that. And he ended up spending the whole year in Laval. So not a great start to the season, Coach. And I think you'll remember there was, for the first time in this rebuild, there were some grumblings. Some of the there's always been a couple of people that were questioning Martin Saint-Louis, right? But those voices were getting louder and louder in late October, early November. People really questioning whether he was going to be able to take them to the next step. But I think that we saw them turn around things once he simplified that system.
Exactly. And then you have the beginning of season where you just mentioned the difficulties of the system, right? And then you have the difficulty of the Caden Primo and the
Oh yeah,
second line, where it was expect Patrick Laine with New Hook and Kirby Doc. They did not start very well, all three together. And then, of course, Laine was hurt. But Caden Primo, he really struggled at the beginning of the season, and they keep him until December, but it was another factor I think did not helping the Montreal to start on the right feet.
absolutely. Like there's stretches of games there, Coach, where Montembeault, they were stretching him way too much, right? Like I forget which back to back, but there was a back to back where they right before Christmas, I think, where they played Montembeault on the back to back, and then I think we all realized, okay, so it's clear at this stage that if they're not going to play Primo on a back to back, that they don't really have plans for him, and we kind of expected something was going to happen at that time. We weren't sure if they were going to call up Dobesh or if they were going to make some type of move. At that time, Coach, we had watched Dobesh in Laval, and he had a pretty good start, and he had a really good, strong end to the season last year. But I think all of us felt like, he's still a little too active in his net, and a little too aggressive sometimes. And I was a little surprised that they brought up Dobesh right away because I thought he could have used a little bit more time. But hey, I guess I was wrong because he came up, and again, it's interesting. We can talk about Dobesh in a minute here, but Dobesh did well, but Montreal also was playing its best defensive hockey during that stretch during the holidays. Where remember when he shut out Florida and everything else, like he played well, but Montreal was playing really well defensively, and they weren't allowing any second opportunities in front of him as well. So they made it a little easier for him to do well. But that was a big turning point of the season here when Primo losing his net. And this is around the time of the year, Coach, where you're right, the second line just wasn't producing. And then, Laine came back. And before we jump into Laine and Carrier and Dobesh, one thing, too, that was really carrying the team was that fourth line, Evans, Heineman, and Armia. There was that one stretch of like 10, 15 games where Evans was scoring like every 2 games. So I think we should note at that part of the season where, obviously they struggled a little bit, especially after Heineman got hit by a car. That's not every season that one of your players gets hit by a car. So I think we should mention that in the postmortem that one of our players got hit by a freaking car, guys. Yeah, there was a part of that season, probably like a 10 to 20 game stretch where the Evans line and Heineman and Armia were just carrying the team, right? And the true, kind of similar to the Islanders line, the identity line. St. Louis was starting them at the beginning of each game. They were getting the puck in deep. And then, because at that point, the Dvorak line was okay, but it wasn't at the same that it was towards the end of the year. It's really the Evans line that set that identity for the team, right? So that was a pretty interesting turning point of the season, too, when Montreal really started to turn things around in December. Is really the Evans line, along with the first line, too, but really the Evans line is killing it.
No, you're
But
absolutely
then,
right about that. I think everything changed in December. When
yeah,
the Patrick Laine came, they have a couple of goals on power play, and that helping them because that time the Montreal was 9-14-4, I think, in the standing,
yeah,
30,
yeah,
31 in the standing on the bottom. And then after that, they trade Justin Barron for Alex Carrier, stabilize the defensive where they put the PP, they play the right share. And then after
Yeah.
that, the debut of the Bears 5-0 after the holidays, one you just mentioned, they
Yeah.
beat Colorado, Vegas, Tampa Bay, Florida Panthers, Carolina, and
Yeah.
that changed completely during the month of December. This is the highest number of points at the same
Yeah.
level like the first line. And then after that, I think the line of Devorak, Anderson, and Gallagher pick it up after the
Yeah.
formation with the first line to finish strong this season for the Montreal Canadiens. And that's the reason the Montreal Canadiens at the end they finish in the mix and of course playoff race until to the last game, and they make the playoff against the Washington Capitals. This is really
Yeah.
the overview of the season of Montreal Canadiens. The number never lie for what they show to the people, and I want to give you its fun number. Saint Martin Saint Louis take the job behind the bench, but only the following year, not during the February until to the end, but the following year. So it's complete now 3 years for the Montreal Canadiens. And after you see the number, I want you to give us a little bit what tell you or what you see through those number. On the number of the point, you have an increasement from 68 to 76 to 91. This has really surprised me, the 91. This is a 15 point. That's pretty amazing if you think about that. Following by the goal four. Now, the goal four, it's an approximately only like a 60 more goals since he was behind the bench like his first year 227, 233, 243. But one thing you have to pay attention, and the Montreal has always been like, Stefan Rabidas, the defensive, everything like that. But look like the number 305 to 281 to 261. We talk about what, 54 goal, maybe France since he is behind Martin Saint Louis. About that, of course, the goal differential is minus better now compared to what was before than the first 3 seasons. So you can see a couple of numbers there. I'm going to consist, then I'm going to let you talk, Marco, if you don't mind. The gold differential minus 78, minus 48, and now minus 18. Just by
78.
those numbers, Marco, what do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, you're right. Like the numbers don't lie. Like, but looking back at that minus 78, like, my God, that was painful. But yeah, like, that's obviously the progression is obvious, right? And like I mentioned earlier, especially for the goals against, that 261, I would be very curious if you took out October and November, what would be the kind of total if they were kind of on the same path that they were like after, like I say, December to the end of the year. I bet you'd be at almost like another 15 or 20 less than kind of what we see here. To me, like when we're projecting for next year, we'll have to see what they do with their lineup, right? Like if they don't bring back any veterans and they put in a whole bunch of young guys, we could see a bit of a regression there, right? Like if they get much younger than they did last year, if they're able to kind of put the right roster together, then you could see this number, especially the goals against, go down again, right? Like ultimately, I think you'd like to see the goals against somewhere like under 230 would be ideal. I think, like that would be really more in the playoff zone there. And you don't see a lot of teams, as we know, making the playoffs if they don't have a goal differential that's at least in the green. Pretty amazing progression, coach, and it's a mix of everything, right? It's Saint Louis. The first couple of years, he wasn't really teaching, there wasn't really result driven. It was really just working on individual skills, individual mindsets with players, really working with individuals. And then the collective came more last year, right? And towards the end of last year. And then this year, it's, like Saint Louis said so many times, it was a shift from, development to learning how to win. And that, to me, that's kind of what the story of the year was. You remember last year, the end of the story was, hey, we lost so many 1-goal games. If we could just learn how to win some of those 1-goal games next year, then we should be in good shape. And that's kind of what we saw, right? Like we saw Montreal be on the right side of those a little bit more often, and it had a huge impact. To me, it's a mix. It's systems, like Martin Saint Louis, making those adjustments to the systems, but it's also player development, but players learning how to play the game the right way, and just becoming better players. So it's a little bit of everything. But it's going to be interesting to see, Coach, if we can see that number continue to improve. It all depends what Hughes does with the roster, right? Because nothing is guaranteed in this league, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely
I
right.
think, who is it that, I think it's Suzuki or Caufield or somebody said it. Just because we made the playoffs this year, it doesn't mean the league's just going to let us make the playoffs again next year, right? So,
Exactly. Now, the power
mhm.
play for Montreal Canadiens under Martin St. Louis 16.1, 17.5, 20.1. This is the first time since 2018 they add over 20%. This is a good number for them. And it's just going to get better and better, I believe, with Hutson, now Demidov, and the rest of the player they got.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
PK is now on the same situation. So the special team under Martin St. Louis slowly, properly the right way, increasing. That's good. 80.9 is average. I did not put any ranking with NHL because usually they are approximately similar. So I think this is a good number for the special team for the Montreal Canadiens. Now I'm going to give you other numbers about fun things.
But Coach, looking at this, to me, there's a pretty clear pattern or story that that comes to mind, because you look at the Corsi and you look at the shots that they're giving up, the shots that they're giving, and the five on five play. Ultimately, what does Martin Saint Louis talk about all the time? Is they need to, and if you look at the playoffs this year, you look at teams like Toronto that are magically suddenly having a little bit of success in the playoffs. What did they change in their game? They get pucks in deep. They get their forecheck going. They spend less time in their zone, right? So that's really what it comes down to. Like, we can talk as much as we want about systems, man on man, hybrid, all that. Bottom line is, you don't want to be spending time in your zone. You want to get the puck out. You want to spend time deep. To me, that, and you need the personnel to do that, right? Like, you need bigger guys to win those battles, and you need to, like, you need fast guys. Like, you need the foot speed, you need the size to win those battles, you need the smarts. So that those are, it's systems, and it's also coaching and training, but it's also having the right guys, right? Like, Montreal is a pretty, overall, is a pretty fast team, but there's still some opportunities there, I think, to get a bit faster. And that's going to be, and when we talk about fast, it's not just skating, right? It's playing fast, right? Like, transitioning and then getting the puck deep, just pushing north, north, north. Coach, you remember, like, the last couple of years, I used to complain all the time about Montreal always cycling the puck back, like behind the net, going D to D too much and going like east west. Got to be more north. I talk a lot about puck retrievals. You have a lot of left hand shots on the right, on the wrong side, which means that the retrievals are not clean. It means their exits are not going to be as smooth because they have to pivot and things like that. So all these things, to me, it shows that Montreal needs to figure out how to get out of their zone a little bit more. Sometimes defending starts in your offensive zone. Sometimes it's just quick retrievals, not making things complicated and getting it out. To me, this is a just overall picture of, like, 5-on-5, Corsi, all those things. It just, Montreal needs to drive the play more north. They need to simplify, and their defensemen need to learn how to move the puck out faster. And then you need some change of personnel and approach a little bit. But you can see Martin St. Louis on the right track, because he talks about it all the time, about establishing their ozone, getting their forecheck going. So I like the direction that they're going, but there's still some work to do there.
So now, the purpose of that show today, it was honestly to give a reading for each player. We're going to do this. And Marco, before we move on, I would like you to explain for the fans what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, or maybe the next week or the following week. We're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, so I think for the balance of this show, we're going to do some individual report cards of the players and kind of go through that. And then, as a second part to this series, I guess, like postmortem series, we're going to take a look at just kind of the track record overall for Kent Hughes and Martin Saint Louis, and kind of overall looking at kind of where we are so far in this rebuild. And then we're going to tease kind of what we're going to do this summer, guys. Like, it's going to be an exciting summer, lots of things going on. So we're going to kind of put together the framework. Last summer, if you followed us here, we had a series, I think it was called like Habs Summer Targets or something like that. And we had all kinds of content throughout the summer, through the draft and after the draft, going to the free agent frenzy and all that. So it's going to be a fun summer. Really, really important summer. We heard Ken Hughes talk about that in his end of season press conference.
So we're going to start with Nick Suzuki. And the graphic I did, guys, I gave the last 3 seasons of the players, honestly, the improvement, what they accomplished. And Marco is going to give us a little bit what he thinks for each player. We're going to give a grade for each player also. So we're going to start with Nick Suzuki. You can see an improvement of 66 to 77 to 89 point, 26 goal, 33 goal, 30 point. First time he accomplished 1 point per game since Alexei Kovalev in 2008. For me, the minus is really where I'm impressive.
Yeah,
From minus 14 to plus 19, the face-off still average what he did. So that's pretty good. His shot percentage is a little bit lower, a little bit, but still higher at the average in the NHL. So when you see those numbers, and the captain of Montreal Canadiens, Nick Suzuki, Iron Man, did not miss any games since he joined the Montreal Canadiens.
coach, like I think you nailed it. Like, to me, the most awesome thing about this is 82, 82, 82, right? Like just the fact that he's so reliable, right? Like he's just you like it doesn't even cross my mind that Suzuki won't be there. And I don't want to jinx things, but man, that's such an amazing thing for a team to count on is the reliability of him, right? But the progression here is outstanding, and I think we all would agree, probably the MVP of the team. To me, Hutson is right there as well, but for sure MVP of the Montreal Canadiens this year, doing it all. You're right. The plus 19 is the biggest kind of recognition of kind of what he was able to do on a team that was overall in the minus for their goal differential. So pretty exciting. Shutting up the entire NHL, who a lot of people always questioning whether, oh, well, Nick Suzuki would be a perfect number 2 center on a contending team. Coach, if I'm not mistaken, I think he finished 7th overall amongst centers in scoring in the NHL. A plus, right? Just highest grade possible. I give him an A for sure.
Yeah, absolutely about that. I agree with you. Let's move on for the next one. And the next one is Cole Caufield. Cole Caufield, first year in NHL, play only 46 games with 26 goals, minus 24. The shooting was at 16.5. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, played 82 games, 28 goals, 65 points. His shot percentage was really low. Half of what it was the second worst in NHL last season, increasing this year at 15.4. Have the best season, have the number of the goal and the number of the point for Cole Caufield. But I think, Marco, you're going to bring something about Cole Caufield.
In addition, so again, 82, 82. So, for many people who question, and I think it was a fair question, with how he started off and with his size and everything, is he going to be able to really kind of make it through these tough NHL grinds of the seasons? And there's no question that's back to back, 82 game seasons. I think we saw a lot of investment in him last year, and we heard over and over and over about him working on his 200-foot game. And we saw that come to fruition this year, Coach. Like you can see he's stronger too. Like it's not just the maturity in his game, but there's a lot of times this year where I'm seeing him win puck battles, coming out of with the puck in 50-50 battles, sometimes even more reliably than Slav. What does that say? Right? Like, like Slav is still obviously better at board battles, but my confidence level of Caufield going into a board battle has increased significantly over the last year. So he's able to keep pucks alive, plays alive, which is crucial for that line, right? Like that's why Montreal's number 1 line, especially in the later part of the year, was one of at the, if you're being conservative, you say top 5 best lines in hockey or over the last couple months of the seasons, and you can argue the best line in hockey at certain points. So Caufield had a huge, coming of age, I guess I would say, as Martin Saint would say, he's a hockey player now. He's a real hockey player, and you can see the leadership too, right? So all of his game really coming to maturity, and so just really impressive to see that, Coach, and just really happy for him. And it shows that sometimes things aren't linear. And one thing, last thing to say about him is, because I know most people are going to be focused on the goal total. What would the goal total look like if Line hadn't joined the team and he was in his office longer on that first unit power play, right? So 37. I still think obviously has the potential to be a 40 goal scorer in the NHL without giving too much away on the other side of the ice, right? So very, very encouraging, kind of progression here by Caufield.
I'm pretty sure you're going to give him an A also for Cole Caulfield. On that.
Absolutely.
Let's move on for the next player we got. This time is Uri Slakowski. Played 39 games first year, got hurt at the middle of the season, 10 point minus 13, play only 12-13, 9.5 shoot percentage. He played for the last two seasons like Caufield, 20 game. 20 goal last year, 18 this year, 50-51 point, minus 19, plus 4. Drop a little bit is still high overall, but shot percentage is approximately the same, a bit increasing. Let me know, talk more about Juraj Sakiski overall his season for your point of view.
Listen, it's a tricky one, right? Like to me, it's a I can't say that this year was a win for Slav because essentially I wouldn't call it regression, but it's static, right? It's pretty much the same. It's almost like a carbon copy of the season before. Tough start. He was collecting his points at the beginning of the year, but I think most people would agree that he wasn't really playing well, but he was just collecting secondary assists and kind of getting his points, but wasn't really playing well. We saw a lot of kind of like the thing with Slav is that he talks a big game, and he says all the right things. So you hope that he's like kind of following through on some of the things that he's talking about. He's saying all the right thing, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of room for growth here, Coach. For me, my expectation for Slav has always been kind of hopefully that he'll become a Nichushkin kind of guy, right? Like one thing I'll say here is that people, when he talks about playing like Brady Tkachuk, I strongly feel that playing like Brady Tkachuk is something you either have it or you don't. You can't teach mean. You can't really become somebody that has that mean streak. Now you can play physical and you can use your body to protect the puck and things like that. But I don't think we're ever going to see Slav be somebody that's mean. It's just not in his nature, guys. It's just not in his nature. You can't teach that unless they hypnotize him or something and like something weird like that. But I just don't see it. So to me, what I really would like to see him focus on here is learning how to use his body to shield the puck, play with both hands on your stick a little bit more often. Like he reminds me too much of Richard Zednik sometimes, like just poking at the puck rather than moving his feet. But to me, it all comes down to skating, like Martin Saint-Louis talks about all the time. I'm a little nervous about his summer because based on kind of what he talked about, he said that he doesn't think that he had a slow start because of his training in the off season. They decided not to go to the World Championship. That was the big adjustment that they made so that he can focus 100% on his training and be ready for next year. To me, the big problem with him, Coach, is his skating. He doesn't have that separation speed yet. I wish that Montreal would just really focus in on getting him some help on his skating, because in order to be effective, you have to be able to get there, right? And I think it's a little bit of a skating, and I would love for him to, he should watch Lane Hutson video and how he uses his body and his stick to win battles. Imagine if Hutson was in the body of Slavkovsky. He would win 100% of his battles, right? I've said this about Jonathan Drouin in the past too. You don't need to be big and strong, and we see this with Hutson, right? You don't need to be big and strong. A lot of it is you can learn how to position your body, how to position your stick, how to lift sticks. Like, so rather than just Slav bowling in there like a bowling ball and just kind of like using his body, I would like him to kind of look at the science of how you win board battles. And again, he doesn't need to look far. Just look at Lane Hutson and how he does that. To me, he needs to improve his skating. I would like to see him shoot more. So overall, Coach, like I'm going to be generous and I'm going to give him a B, but I wouldn't be mad if I could see why people would give him a C this year. But I'll be generous because 50 points. He's still a young guy. +4. So I'll give him a B.
The next one,
Brendan,
Brendan Gallagher, the captain, the not captain, but the oldest player
oh,
for the
maybe.
Montreal Canadiens. Honestly, since been there for the since 2005, 2008, I believe. He
Yeah,
last for the last two seasons play honestly 82 games. He was suspended 5 games last season. He's increased his number the goal at 21, 38 point minus six only. Playing now a role minor role as a bottom six, 13, 14 minutes per game. His shoot percentage was pretty good this year, 14.2. One of his best year, I believe, in the last 5 seasons for Brendan Gallagher.
couldn't agree more. One thing that I find surprising, I'm glad you put these 3 years together, Coach. I thought maybe, okay, you can explain, okay, maybe he's playing a bit better because his ice time is a little bit more regulated, but it's pretty much the same, right? It's
Yeah.
been the same over the last 3 years. Um, so I think the ice time is really where it comes down to with Gallagher, right? Like I find his legs were so much fresher this year. I find overall his speed, even like sometimes like I was surprised by how quickly he's kind of getting around the ice. So just total emotional leader of the team. Really happy for him that he was able to kind of have jump over the 20 goal mark. It's probably for him psychologically a huge win to get over that 20 goal mark when a lot of people
Definitely.
never get a chance to do that. So it's crazy how things change, Coach. And we're going to talk about Gallagher, we're going to talk about Anderson this year, and we're going to talk about Doc, right? So what I'm going to mention it twice here. So if you look at Brendan Gallagher and if you look at Anderson, how many people want, including probably us at some point, wondering, okay, how can we get rid of these guys? They're going to be anchors. Their salaries are going to be problematic. It's crazy how one season can change your outlook on a player, right? So really, what it comes down to is the player dedicated to the team, and we always knew that about Gallagher. You can say that about Slav too, right? Like you can be concerned, but everything we hear about Slav is that he's dedicated to getting better. And when Martin Saint Louis talks about having good humans, we have to take their word for that. Gallagher is a good human. So is Anderson. So the big question mark is Doc, right? And we'll talk about Doc. But so for me, I'm looking at players like Gallagher and we'll talk about Anderson. But those are great examples for a player like Doc about how you can really turn things around over a couple of seasons. I would give him a B.
I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Like this, the
Yeah.
next one is Jake Evans. Evan again played 82 games the last two seasons. He has jumping for 14.3 years ago at 28 and 36 next this year. All the biggest number of his career one season, 13 and 36. Go from -5 to +1. Face off is an average. Look, 52, 52, 52. But the biggest strength for him is really a little bit abnormal. Is a safe shot percentage at 16.3. So for me, it will be hard for him to repeat the same thing. Maybe drop a couple of goals next season. But again, behind this number, we always talking about maybe he was maybe the number one or number two forward the most minute on the PK this year, and he
In
played
the end.
a special important role, versatile in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens, winger, center, everything like that. Glad this get him. And what do you think about overall Jake Evans?
Great season, and I think you covered most of it here, Coach. What I'll say about Evans is congratulations for Kent Hughes in that negotiation, not falling for the into that pressure to pay him for that stretch of games where his shooting percentage was just insane, right? And good for Jake Evans to he like it's such a dramatic story, right? Like before the trade deadline, going into the Four Nations and everything, like his apartment was packed, he's ready to go, and we're talking about good humans that want to be there and everything else. So, listen, could we envision that next year he's going to be at that 28-point margin again, like 7 goals? That's fine. Fourth line center, killing penalties, doing all those things at the number that Kent Hughes is able to bring him in at. I think it's great. So good signing, happy with it. Great season for him. I think he probably was a little bit injured down the stretch, so we didn't see his best kind of maybe in the last 20 games. Him and Armia probably more playing at 100% there. But I think for me, I give him a solid B for this year. Like I said, to me, the one of the most important factors of the season is Montreal's PK, and he's right at the top of the list of contributors to their penalty kill. So
Well said. I think he's the man of Martin Saint Louis. He can, Martin Saint Louis can use him at any time, at any moment. So, great point about
yeah,
him. Next one, Christian Dvorak. Dvorak, listen, look, he played finally 82 games this year, 33 points, his best season with the Montreal Canadiens during his 4 year, -5, 55.8. This is where he's really good on the face-off. Save a shot percentage drop. Play only 30 games last year before that. Honestly, this is the player where you can consider he finished strong this season. I think he helping the Montreal for the race on the mix. He was a solid center between Anderson and Gallagher. They have a lot of good chemistry, but now you have three, and he was the only one left shoulder and center for the Montreal Canadiens. This is the biggest question for the Montreal. What are you going to do with him? And how you feel about Christian Dvorak over?
I think I got a lot of heat this summer when I talked about Dvorak and whether Montreal should extend him. And listen, you're right. He's the only left-handed center that Montreal has, and if you look at that face-off percentage, there's nobody in the pipeline or on the team. Newhook is not going to come in and win those face-offs, right? So, to me, I think you're right. Like, bit of a slower start, but he did have a really strong end to the season. And to me, coach, like, this can be explained by looking at this table, right? Like, you only played 30 games last year, and it's too bad because the year before that, in 2023, he finished the season really strong there, but then he got injured again in 2024. So that's a lot of, like, if you're looking at Doc and if you're looking at other players that are recovering from those kinds of knee injuries, you can see a big difference in the way he moves around the ice. And it just took him, half a season to really kind of get things going. To me, my expectation when they traded for Dvorak, if you look at him in Phoenix, he's like a 40-point guy, 18 goals, and about 40 points. That was my expectation for him. I think if Montreal whoever is going to re-sign him, if he stays healthy, now that he's had that full season behind him, I think easily he can be that guy again. 18 goals, 40 points, 55% in the faceoff dot. His shooting percentage is more than reasonable, right? So, to me, again, tough start to the season. I know we're not. You have to give him a C just because of the slower start. But I'll say that it's a C. If possible, I would give him a C plus, right? But we'll do a C just because a bit of a slower start. But you're right. He had such a big impact, helping them down the stretch.
Next one, Patrick Laine. Mr. Laine played 52 games with the Montreal Canadiens, 20 goals, 13 assists, 33 points, -14, 14 minutes per game, 17 shot percentage. He has 15 goal power play, 5 goal at 5 assists, 5. We know his story, got hurt, played 18 games the year before that, 55 games before that. Look his number, approximately the same kind of goal he got. So he become for me at that pace and approximately 35 goals per year if he play 82 game. I don't see he will do it again 82 game in NHL.
Just looking at his report card for this year, I'm going to give him a B, coach, because again, 18 games. Like, we were just talking about that with Dvorak, right? So, didn't play a lot the year before, didn't have a full summer to train. Then he gets the massive injury. All of us, to me, this is just like this 20 goals that we got from Patrick Laine is bonus. None of us thought he would, like, who here thought that when they saw him go down in Toronto in the preseason, how many of us thought he was going to play any games and that he was going to be able to do anything for the Montreal Canadiens in 24-25? So for him to come in, have that impact right around December, inject all that energy into the Bell Center with those power play goals and everything else. Yes, you can talk about his 5-on-5 play. I think, ultimately, I think there's parts, like, I can see him being able to play better 5-on-5. You just hope he can kind of go have a good, strong summer training and come back. But listen, like, I like the way that he approached his press conference at the end of the year. Like, for him, his whole goal this year was just to have fun, learn how to like just learned how to love playing hockey again. And you can tell like there's parts of the season where he felt the love for Montreal. Hopefully he's staying off social media so that he doesn't see the other side of it. Hopefully that's part of his mental coaching, is not to go read all the stuff that people say and talk about him, because to me it's a huge win for him to come in and deliver what he did for the Montreal Canadiens this year. I think Kent Hughes said it, like, or somebody said it in the post mortem, is maybe they don't make the playoffs without Patrick Laine. Like you can. There's other factors too, right? But those 20 goals, those power play goals, were pretty important. So to me, I give him a B.
The next one is Joan Armia. Armia played 81 games this season, 11 goals, 15 assists, 26 points, minus 2, 14 for 18, 10%, 0.6 shoot percentage. Almost the same thing last year, but he did it in 66 games. Final year contract with the Montreal Canadiens as a UFA.
So you have to take away, the month and a half or so that he was playing with a broken hand and kind of put that to the side, right? It's one of those kind of, it's similar to Dvorak here. Remember we talked about there was that month and a half where the Evans line was too fur, too flam, like we would say, right? Like they were really carrying the team. And, during that time, I would give him an A, for that stretch, but overall, again, like really important part of the PK. But we'll talk about whether this is another RFA coach, or sorry, UFA, that they're going to have to kind of make a decision on this summer. Overall, we didn't see as much Mario Armia this year than we did last year, in my opinion. 17 goals last year in 66 games. I just felt like, he's very effective on the PK, but created a little less, other than that month, stretch there with Evans and Heineman. So to me, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna say D for Joel Armia, but I could be argued into a C. But overall, yeah, I'm gonna go with a D.
Josh Anderson, 21 goal, 9 goal, 15 goal. We know exactly what happened to him last year, minus 18. Go back now to minus 2. Plus, his TOI was less this year, but his shot percentage, Marco, back normal
Yep.
like he was before that. We know he's not going to score 30 goals per year, but it's not about the number or the point or the proximity, but more what he brings on the ice.
St. Louis talked to, describe Josh Anderson as a culture driver, right? So to me, him and Gallagher are kind of the emotional leaders of the team. And like I was saying before, they're both great examples of how you can turn your career around, right? Like and you can't you can't just give up on a player necessarily. You hear about teams giving up on rookies or kind of prospects, right? But that's probably one of the more innovative things with Martin St. Louis, Hughes, and their whole management team, is they don't just look at development in terms of young players, look at development and with when it comes to their veterans. And Josh Anderson and Gallagher are great examples of that. So, what an inspiring season for him. Like just the consistency in which he was able to deliver that, the energy and physical play throughout the season was and really impressive. And then, especially after the injury, right? Like just a total inspiration to his teammates. You heard Carrier, when he got injured and you saw kind of what was wrong with his ankle. He's like, hey, when you see kind of what some of the guys here have been playing through, it was a no-brainer that I was going to do my best to play, even though my ankle was injured, in the playoffs, right? So these are the kind of culture drivers that you need in your team. And, really happy for him, because remember, I don't know if you remember, Coach, but I think it was not last season, the season before that. One of my headlines, we were talking about Armia. He come back from Laval, and he talked about how he got psychological help, and we're a little critical of Anderson. Like, hey, like why doesn't he go out and try to get some of that help? And like, why doesn't he be more like Armia and be able to be more self-aware and understand that he needs something or whatever? But that's what he ended up doing, right? He ended up reevaluating things. Last summer, after the season ended, he stayed in Montreal, and he was around the rink like all summer. To me, like that's incredible dedication. And That's why there's a couple things, like you almost wish Slav would have done something like that. Maybe there's a little bit more maturity, but you'd love for Slav to just kind of stick around and say, you know what, like I know the season's over, but I still have a lot of work to do, right? And hopefully we'll see that from a couple more players. But to me, Josh Anderson is great culture driver and great turnaround for him. And we hope that that's a template for some. We're going to talk about Kirby Doc here, so maybe we hope Kirby Doc is going to be the next Josh Anderson in that sense, right? So lot of positives and a great example for his teammates. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Give him a B.
Perfect. We move on to the next one. Alex Newhook. Newhook played 82 games this year. Approximately the same number of points, but dropped compared to the year before. Minus 21. 15 minutes, less points. The shot percentage was 12.7. Look, overall, he struggled. At the end of the day, we have to be honest with you, up and down.
Yeah, overall, coach, very disappointing season, I think, for Newhook. Similar to Cole Caufield, what the narrative you hear about him is, okay, so St. Louis talked, you heard him mention this several times, is this year he wanted Newhook to use his speed, not just to create offense, but to come back and add pressure defensively. And we did see that a little bit, right? And I think that's a bit of the preview or a tease to kind of maybe what kind of role Alex Newhook is going to play. So if you don't bring back Yoel Armia, to me, Alex Newhook is a perfect candidate to maybe play with Evans, like, what helped with Anderson is they gave him a very specific role. You're going to be on the PK. Don't worry so much about the offense. It is what it is. You're going to get your chances. You'll do what you do. But really, your focus right now is going to be PK, be good 5-on-5. That's going to use your speed, add pressure, keep pucks alive, all that stuff, and then everything else is just gravy. I think that's what I would like to see from future Alex Newhook is have him be a part of the PK. If you're losing somebody like Armia, I think he'd be a perfect fit there with Evans. So I think to me, overall, you have to give him a D. Like I think the effort is there. I don't think it's anything about, it's not a lack of effort. Just doesn't have I think the finishing or the hands really. A lot of people, we joke around, we call him like the Russ Courtnall of the 2020s, kind of the Le Chevreuil, or Jean Hull kind of guy. So lots of good attributes here. I think we have a player, coach. I think you're right. We just have to find the right chair for him. I don't doubt his compete. I don't doubt his effort. It's just a matter of channeling what he can do in the right place. And I think St. Louis, from what I've heard him talk about him, I think he already has it in his mind, kind of what his role is going to be. I don't think it's going to be top six. I hope it's not top six, but some positive things to look forward to.
Kirby Duck, Mr. Kirby Duck, a 52 game, 22 point, minus 29. He was really in the freezer. 40.3% face off, 11.9 shot percentage. He does not have a bad year the first year with Montreal Canadiens, if you can say that. He was in direction to get maybe 45, 50 points, maybe 20, 18, 20 goals. He got hurt the second year. He got hurt on the third year. Unlucky, and everything you can mention about him. A lot of things talk against him, but now it's your turn to explain. What do you see? What are you looking for Kirby Dog?
Oh man, I think going into the season, coach, we knew that this year was the ultimate year of evaluation, and to really understand kind of what Montreal had with Kirby Doc as a second line center. And so I think the only positive I can say is that they have an answer, right? I think at least they have an answer in terms of whether he can be a second line center. I still think he can be a top six player as a winger, but I just don't see it as a center, right? Like just the face-off percentages, regardless of whether he came in good shape or not. You still you should have had the ability to work on those face-offs. That's a learned skill. That's something that you can work on. To me, I think it's kind of surfaced here over the last couple of weeks that even he realized that maybe his summer wasn't strategized the best. He didn't come into the optimal shape that he would have liked to, even though, obviously he only played 2 games the season before. I think I agree with Hugo's assessment this summer. Like, there's still a place for Kirby Doc in the lineup, and ultimately, it's going to be up to him as to where that is. So, to me, Coach, it's going to have to be a D. There's going to be parts. There's that little part in December, on that road trip where he had that really nice goal against Vegas. Like, the second line was looking okay for a couple games when they were with Newhook and Line. But overall, like, there's not a lot. There's not a lot to like. Like, he was. I think, did he finish at the very bottom plus minus? Like, there was a part of the season where he was very last in the league for plus minus. I'm not a huge believer in that stat overall, but when it's to that extent, when you're the very last in the league, it's hard to overlook that, right? So it's not just the points, it's not just kind of the results. It's really kind of, I remember that 2023 season, Coach Kirby Doc was winning a lot of board battles. We could go back and we could talk about it. Like, he was really good at winning battles. He was combative, and he was really good on the puck and everything. But we didn't see that from him this year. So not only his legs weren't there, but there's a lot of holes in the game, and it all comes down to his skating. So, maybe even an E. Like, it's a pretty hard one. I don't want to be too mean here, but definitely a failing grade for Kirby Doc, unfortunately, this season.
Well, you give him a grade.
I'm gonna say, I'll be nice. We're trying to be positive. I'll go D. I'll give him a D.
See, yeah. Eamon and Eamon play only 2 seasons, first year time with a Montreal 62 game, 10 goal, 8 assists, 18 point, minus 6, 11, 24, 15.6. A little bit high shoot percentage, honestly. But I think you're going to give me a note exactly like Christian Dvorak, I believe.
Yeah, c'est en deux temps, right? His season, like, if you ask me to grade the first half of the season, it would be an A, and then you have to gravitate more towards like a C, towards the second half of the season after he got hit by a car, right? So, yeah, I don't know what's if there's kind of like still some elements, kind of psychologically after that just he just wasn't able to kind of get that
He has
groove
zero
going
goal,
back.
Marco, after that.
Yeah, 0 goals after that. So there's no question that's the TSN turning point of his season was being in Utah and getting hit by a car. So overall, still found ways to contribute, like, still physical, like, it still was good on the forecheck, but not as creative on the forecheck. Like, he was still getting the body in, but it's like I was saying before, Coach, it's one thing to get hits, but to separate players from the puck and, kind of generate plays, a little less of that from him in the second half of the season. We had thought, okay, so Heineman has established himself permanently here as somebody in the bottom six for Montreal, and a lot of people are calling for him to be in the top six and stuff like that. Nothing guaranteed for him next year, Coach. I think, like, Montreal has a lot of competition for their bottom six in the years to come. So if he wants to maintain his position here, he's going to need to. I think if he's the Emil Heineman that we saw early in the year, no question he has a spot and is a very valuable member of the team. But he's going to need to find that same essence that he was able to get. So overall, for me, I'm going to say I'll give him a C, because I think that's the average, but at some points it would have been way higher, but overall a C.
Here we go. We're going to finish with the defenseman and the goaltender, guys. Now, we have different players, like guys who I didn't mention, Joshua Rouen, Owen Beck. All the players did not play 40 game, 50 game. I just delete them. It's not necessary. During summer, during the summer target, we're going to talk about those players. We're going to have a program, Marco, the next couple of weeks talking about the Laval Rocket when they're going to finish the season overall for the prospect for the Montreal Canadiens. So, Len Hutson, phenomenal.
Phenomenal. So I don't think much debate here. Like, for a post-mortem, Coach, I felt we spent so much time talking about Hutson this season. I feel like we're shortchanging him a little bit in our post-mortem, right? But the impact that Lane Hutson had to this team, it can't be measured, right? Like, it really changes the whole dynamic. Like, so for sure an A. Just such a crazy impact. And again, if you look at that -2, I think is misleading. A lot of empty net goals, as we
I
know,
think I'm minus 12 in the empty net.
empty nets, right? And then I'm sure if you look at him post, December, I'm sure it'd be different as well too, right? So Calder Cup, I think I'd be shocked if he doesn't win Rookie of the Year this year. It would be a robbery if he doesn't, in my opinion. But absolute game changer. We'll see. I was watching the Arpin and Basu post-mortem, and interesting, they were talking about his off season, how he's looking to put on a little bit of muscle this summer, and how he's really concerned about putting on some muscle, but not so much that it's going to affect his agility and everything else. So, this is a player that you have to believe in because he has the work ethic of an elite player. Why is Sidney Crosby the best? Why is McDavid the best? Because they work harder than absolutely everybody else. And we know that Lane Hutson is an absolute rink rat and hockey nerd. I have zero, like, could he have a little bit of a sophomore slump next year? It's not impossible. Like, the league knows what they're gonna, your second time around the league is a bit different. But I believe in this young man. He is a pro and is absolute elite in his work ethic. So Montreal is so lucky to have this guy. And, I just hope that we're able to take advantage of his very special abilities here in the next couple of years.
The next one, Mike Madison dropped from 62 point at 31 point. It's 50-50. But he dropped from minus 24 at minus 6. He played 80 games this season. Play approximately the same number of the. But the fact the number of the point drop is because he gave the chance to Lane Hudson become the PP1. Every time that, drop the number of the goal. Some people hate Mike Madison, gave away
Yeah.
puck, turnover puck, mistake, decision making, every time that. And some people respect Mike Madison as a hockey player. And he bring a ton of minutes on the PK, on fun ways. And I think it's not only reflect also on the ice, but also on the off ice. So it's your turn to give a note to Mike Madison.
Yeah. So interesting. Hadn't seen his time on ice average this year and comparing it to last year. A lot of PK, right? Like, obviously his role has shifted tremendously, not only having the second unit power play. So overall, I won't go into kind of what his role is moving forward here, and there's a lot of debate to have around that. Overall, I'm going to give him a B because I think there's just the amount of minutes that I talked about the PK and how important that was to Montreal's success this year, and he's right up there, right? He's a top pair with David Savard most of the time, killing penalties. We know, he's not perfect. There's definitely some turnovers. His puck retrievals could be a bit cleaner, and things like that. But you can't deny the overall progress. Like you said, Coach, he's an absolute pillar, in terms of the time on ice that they rely on him for. You can debate what, I'm sure we will this summer, as to kind of what they do. There's a lot of players on the left side of that defense, and they're going to have to make some decisions, I think, there. But at the end of the day, good season for Mike Matheson. Not perfect, but Montreal would not be where they are without him.
Next one, Kaden Coley. Coley played 55 games this season, unfortunately for him, after a single game before that. Approximately the same number of goals, less point. But again, another one plus 8, increasing number of minutes per game. Shot percentage at 8.5. I believe for me, like if you talk about the package deal, is maybe the best defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, like really good season for Caden. Like, I love the fact that they have him back on the left side. If you've been following us here over the last couple of years, I think a lot of the kind of hits that he was taking and some of the injuries he was getting was because he was on his wrong side, and he's not as agile of a guy to kind of always be on his wrong side and pivoting. He was putting himself in tough positions. So, the injury that he had this year is just clumsy, right? It's just like just a clumsy play where he cut himself. My only criticism of Gouli is that he's a bit clumsy, right? Like, he's a little bit clumsy, needs to be a little bit stronger in his core so that he has better center of gravity and things like that, right? But in terms of being a gamer and in terms of like his overall potential, I think you're right. Like he's the best two-way defenseman that Montreal has in their system. You hope that Reinbacher will be in a similar kind of guy, maybe with a little less leadership than Caden Gooley. But or I'll give Gooley a B. You know, like I think good strides in his game. I think I can't say that he took a major jump. Like I see him. I didn't see any major improvements from him. You know, other than maybe again being on the left side and not being as exposed. I'd like to see him get a bit stronger. You know, because he is
He's
tall,
still
but he's still
physical, Marco. I think Marco, I said Marco. He's
yeah.
very physical. When he goes to hit someone, he hits someone very very hard.
Yeah, but I still think he could be a little stronger because if he wants to bring that to his game, that because there's no question, like he's talked about that he wants to be more physical than he's been, and I think for him to reach that top pairing two-way shutdown defenseman, I just think he needs to get a little bit stronger. But to me, really good. I'll say a slight progression over last year. I just really want to see a full season from Gooley. Yeah, so I'll go B just because of that.
How about Jacky?
Yeah, so I think overall great season for him. Like lots of learning. And I think a good evolution from last year where he spent a lot of time in Laval to kind of work on his game. I think overall we saw that there's long stretches of play where he was able to play within himself. I think it's just a tricky thing, right? For him to, as Sandy would say, learn the game within the game. I know there's a lot of controversy around this player. A lot of people think that Sandy hates him and that he wants to neuter him and everything else. Nobody is telling Jacky that he can't play physical. Everybody wants him to play physical to bring that intimidation, but you need to do it within the framework of the game. Definitely took strides in that this year. And I think to me, he's still a really, really important part of the future bottom six for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I'm going to give him a C for this year, I think, because I think there's long stretches of games here where he was able to be consistent, but for him to kind of like take that full step forward is to stay consistent with that defensive play, be reliable defensively, and infuse what everybody wants from him, which is the more physical play, not chase it and everything else, right? So good progression from last year in terms of consistency, bringing that consistency to the defensive play, but it's not 100% there yet. So I think it's still a work in progress. But overall, I'm happy with kind of what I saw from Jacky this year.
Jaden's trouble was a bit difficult to bring him. I bring him on the table, play anyway 56 game overall for
Yeah.
both year. Look, up and down. I think he has a very good camp, and then he come back from injury. He struggled, and then he filled the job of Jacky, and then he tried to go figure out something else. It's very hard to play on the phone. It's a little bit like Jacky. It's another player where they try to figure out who they are.
Yeah, no, I think good bounce back season. I think for him, like he came out and was so consistent for them when he first came up from Laval last season, and I think everybody kind of jumped the gun a little bit with him, and then we saw a bit of a regression, right? But I think the way Sandy we kind of described what happened with him this year is that he needed a runway, right? Like I think that's what Sandy we talked about. Like he needed a stretch of games to just find his game, and then with Gooley being injured, and then when they paired him with Hutson, it was just the perfect opportunity for him to kind of get a runway of a bunch of games, put some games together. So to me, the debate that you hear is like, well, yeah, of course he looked good playing with Hutson. Anybody would look good playing with Hutson. That's the question that comes up, right? But then after when Gooley came back, he played with Savard, and I think for the most part he still looked pretty good. To me, it poses a lot of questions on the left side here. Like to me, I'm going to give Jaden Struble, I'm going to say a C for the whole season. But that stretch where he was playing with Hutson, like if you're just looking, say, January to the end of the season, I give him a B. I think overall, like I think he showed a lot this season. Still like to see him be a little bit more physical, but he's kind of like the opposite of Jacky, right? Like you want to see more physical out of him, a little bit more meanness, but he's a little bit more consistent defensively.
The goaltender Samuel Montembeault. Montembeault put only one goaltender because Tobesh come at the end, and then of course Primo was not there. Really, best season for Montembeault overall. 62 game, 60 as a starter, 31 double the number to win. First time below 3.00. Save percentage at 0.902. This is a little bit above average in NHL now. Look,
Yeah.
this is a record for him. Great performance of Samuel Montembeault. We don't talk about the GSVA. I don't talk about everything like that. But pretty solid season for the goaltender Samuel Montembeault.
In a season where we talked about evaluating the assets that Montreal has, one of the big questions was is Samuel Montembeault at least a 1A in the NHL? And I think he answered those questions. Not only is he a 1A, I'm giving him an A for this year. It's, hard to imagine where Montreal would be with Samuel Montembeault. I think the numbers are a bit misleading. Like you said, like we don't have GSVA on here and everything else. I think he's again top of the league, top quarter of the league here in terms of goal saves above expected. And just overall the calmness, right, and the consistency that he brought. I think it's such a big difference. You saw it in the playoffs. Dobesh did okay, right, but losing Montembeault in the playoffs was really something that Montreal just couldn't overcome, right? So, to me, he answered a lot of questions. Got to go to the Four Nations, great experience for him. And then I think we saw the positive impact that had on him as well, just to his overall confidence level and everything else. So, what a great season for Sam. What a great contract that is in retrospect here for Montreal. Really happy. And I think in the short term, like I think as we see the evaluation of Dobesh and of course Fowler, I think Montreal's in good shape. I think overall the management team seems pretty confident where they are with their goaltending right now. So amazing season for Sam. And there we go, Coach. We did our full report card for the
Yeah,
entire.
only one I want to talk about is Alex Carrier. Didn't put him because he played only half of the season, but we know exactly
Yeah.
what Carrier. If you have to give him a grade, in my opinion, for me, I'll give him a B.
I'm going to give him an A, Coach, just because of the impact that he had, right? Like, and I think he does everything well. Like, so I give him a little bit higher, prone to the odd turnover here and there. But again, he's probably playing a bit above. Like he should be on a second pair, right? But really, he's playing on a first pair. So if Montreal addresses that, like with the context, what they asked of him to come in and know, like remember how well he played, and he had zero kind of like practices with the team either, right? For I think it was like 7 games he played, and Montreal had no practices. He just jumped in, plug and play, and had an impact right away. So incredible and a huge turning point in Montreal season for sure.
Great point about that. Let's conclude the show on what we've got today. The app pass more time. I would love to all of you guys to give us a little bit your grade. If you agree, disagree, look, we are not expert. We just give our own opinion, and we would love to hear from all of you. And then, Marco, what's coming next? The next show for the Montreal ad post mortem.
Yeah. So we talked about the players, we talked about kind of the timeline of the season. So maybe we'll do a bit of a post-mortem on how did Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, St. Louis, how did the management team handle this season, right? We talked about things like Kovacevic and some of the trades and some of the other stuff, and also we maybe talk a little bit about what they learned, and so kind of from the perspective of the management team, and that will tee us up for the rest of the summer here, where heading up into the draft and heading up into free agency and kind of get into our summer groove here, Coach, where should be an exciting summer, a really important summer for the Montreal Canadiens. Lots of big decisions to be made. So our last piece of the postmortem will be more from the point of view of the management team. So we hope that you come in for that. Like Coach said, leave your comments. Tell us how wrong we are. Tell us how right we are. We love hearing from you. And thanks a lot for joining us for this one. It was lots of fun.
Absolutely right about this. For the people, guys, this is the beginning of the summer target show. We call this the notebook for the last one. But during summer, we're going to come back a little bit more for often during summer. One, the player will be more like only one game per week. We're going to have a regular show live. This one is recording. But definitely we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens because we still have a lot of things to talk about The Laval Rocket are still in the playoff right now. You have
What?
also Owen Pross sang is a PDO with the Laval Rocket. You have other player play the World Championship at this moment. Still have a hockey over there, and they still have a couple of rookies play left and right in the final championship. And then finally the NHL draft in June. Then after that you have the UFA. So we still a lot of talks to talk about. It that's the reason the summer target show is going to be back at the regular time, usually one time per week. So check your notification. All of you, don't forget please to subscribe and of course to likes. And Marco, it was a pleasure to work with you. It was a couple of weeks. I think we didn't see you since the playoff. We tried to focus on the playoff, but we're going to see you a little bit more and more on the next couple of weeks talking about the Montreal Canadiens. So I can't wait to see you until the next time. So I want to thank you, my friend, to be with us. Let's go,
Enjoy the
Montreal.
rest. Yeah.
We'll see
Enjoy
for
the rest.
Laval Rocket now. What's going to happen? How you feel about the Laval Rocket? Just your last word of the show, Marco. I know you follow the
Yeah,
Laval Rocket too.
Calder's been pretty good. Like he hasn't had a lot of work, right? So some of those games against Utica or whatever, like they didn't get a lot of shots, right? So next series against Rochester is going to be very, very hard. Really good team. Buffalo has a really deep prospect system, so this next series, a little bit of time off, but really looking forward to that one. Obviously, some big answers, like we're looking at Weinbacher in particular, Mayu, Beck, like lots of. We're still in evaluation mode, coach. Right? We're still looking at the prospects, and this is a great experience for them. So we'll be watching that very closely for sure.
Very excited about Florent Jacquet, Marco. I think he's going to be really a good player long term for the Montreal Canadiens. So thanks again, Marco, to be with us. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget, we'll be back in the next couple of weeks, next week, talking about the Montreal Canadiens. Until the next time, my friend, we wish you an amazing, great week. And of course, don't forget, please, to click on the like, the subscribe, and click on the likes. Have an amazing, great week, everybody.